Lose your job tomorrow. How long do you last? 7 days or 7 hours? One emergency room bill. That's all it takes. Your safety net? Gone. Vaporized. When money disappears, choice disappears. And dignity, it follows right behind. Now flip the lens. Money isn't paper, it's leverage. It's buying time, buying silence, turning your words from please into do it. From Caesar to the CEO in the corner office, power listens to one language, only one. In this video, I'll show you why saving won't save you, why poverty is chains dressed as virtue, and the field-tested framework to move from the evaluated to the evaluator. Legal, cold, efficient. Stay to the end. If you're still here, comment, I choose wealth. Let's establish the ground rules right now, before we go any further. Money is leverage. Money is power. Money is freedom. Without it, you lose choice. Without choice, you lose your voice. That's not philosophy. That's physics. Social physics. Now, before anyone twists this into something it's not, let me be crystal clear. At all costs means discipline and strategy. It does not mean breaking the law. It does not mean abandoning ethics. What it means is this: you pay the price today so you never have to bow tomorrow. You sacrifice comfort now to buy independence later. That's the cost. That's the game. Look at this for a second. Imagine 2 columns. On the left, life without money. On the right, life with money. Left side, you wait in the queue. You explain yourself to strangers. You fear the unexpected. You ask permission for everything. Right side, you skip the line. You decide. You have options. You command respect without raising your voice. Same world, different rules. The only variable, money. This isn't about greed. This is about sovereignty, the ability to say no, the ability to walk away, the ability to protect the people you love when the world gets ugly, and it will get ugly. It always does. So here's the thesis. Money is not everything, but everything costs money. And the people who tell you otherwise, they're either lying or they've already secured theirs. Let's talk about the lies you've been fed, the comfortable ones, the ones that keep you compliant. Money isn't everything. Your parents said it. Your teachers repeated it. Influencers post it on Instagram with a sunset backdrop. Politicians echo it during election season. Even your friends nod along at brunch, right before they check their investment portfolios. But let's examine who benefits from you believing that lie. Your bank takes your deposits and loans them out at 10 times the interest rate they pay you. Corporations take $1 of your labor and turn it into $10 of profit. Governments print debt and expect you to absorb the inflation while your purchasing power evaporates. Meanwhile, the wealthy, they don't work for money. They make money work. They understand the game you were told didn't exist. Here's what they know. Money is a tool. A hammer doesn't care if you're building a house or breaking a window. It's neutral. But in the right hands, it constructs empires. The comfortable lie serves a purpose. It keeps the majority passive. It makes you feel noble about struggling. It reframes poverty as virtue and ambition as vice. And while you're busy being humble, someone else is buying the building you rent. Let me ask you something. When was the last time a broke person changed the world? Not inspired it, changed it. Built the hospital, funded the research, constructed the infrastructure, created the jobs. You can have the best idea in human history, but without capital, it dies in your notebook. You can be morally right about everything, but without resources, you're just correct and powerless. And power doesn't care about correctness, it cares about capacity. So when someone tells you money isn't everything, ask yourself, who profits from me believing that? Because I guarantee you, the person saying it has either secured their position or wants to keep you from securing yours. Here's the open loop I'll close later. Saving alone won't save you. Saving is defense. But defense never wins the game. You need offense. You need systems. And you need to understand why the system is designed to keep you saving instead of building. Hold that thought. We'll return to it. Let's go back, way back, because this isn't new. This pattern has been running for thousands of years. Julius Caesar didn't conquer Gaul with speeches. He paid his legions. Alexander the Great didn't inspire loyalty through charisma alone. He distributed spoils. The treasury walked before the army. Always. Because soldiers don't fight for ideals when their families are starving. Look at religion. The greatest ideas in human history, the philosophies that shaped civilizations, they all required one thing: patronage. The Sistine Chapel, commissioned. The Library of Alexandria, funded. The printing press, monetized. Even virtue requires bread. Art, science, revolution, every single movement that changed the world needed resources. Mozart died broke, but his patrons didn't. Shakespeare wrote for paying audiences. Da Vinci painted for the Medici family. Genius without funding is just noise in a basement. Here's the pattern. Correctness is not enough. You can be right, you can be brilliant, but without amplification, you're invisible, and amplification costs money. The ideas that survive aren't necessarily the best ideas. They're the most funded ideas. The ones with distribution. The ones that can buy attention, pay for platforms, sustain campaigns. Truth doesn't spread on its own. It needs engines. And engines run on capital. This is why history is written by the victors, not because they were right, but because they could afford the ink and the scribes and the time to craft the narrative. Poverty silences, wealth amplifies. Think about this. Every revolution that succeeded had backers. Every failed revolution ran out of money before it ran out of believers. Belief is free. Bullets cost money. Logistics cost money. Coordination costs money. So when you study history, don't just read the stories. Follow the money. Watch who funded what and when. You'll see the invisible hand that shaped everything you thought happened naturally. Power has always spoken one language. The question is, are you learning to speak it, or are you still pretending the language doesn't exist? There's an old saying, gold walks before him, and doors open that seemed locked forever. Let me show you what that means in practical terms. Money doesn't just buy things, it buys access. It buys patience. It softens resistance before you even arrive. When you have resources, people listen differently. Not because you're smarter, but because you represent consequence. You represent opportunity. You represent risk. Here's the motif I want you to remember, and I'm going to repeat this throughout this video. Words without money are a plea. Words with money are a command. Same sentence, same tone, different context, completely different result. Imagine you walk into a negotiation empty-handed. You pitch an idea. They smile, they nod, they say, "We'll think about it." Translation: no, soft rejection, plausible deniability. Now imagine you walk in with a contract and a wire transfer ready. Same idea, same pitch. They don't smile politely anymore. They pull out chairs. They call their lawyers. They clear their schedules. Why? Because you're not asking. You're transacting. Money mutes insults. Someone disrespects you when you're broke. You swallow it. Someone tries the same when you have resources. You have options. Legal options. Social options. Business options. They calculate the cost of disrespecting you, and suddenly, the respect appears. This is the language of power. It doesn't require shouting. It doesn't require aggression. It just requires capacity. The capacity to follow through. The capacity to reward. The capacity to punish. And capacity is measured in resources. Let me give you a micro example. Two people say the same thing in a meeting. One is junior, broke, expendable. The other has equity, leverage, options. Guess whose idea gets implemented? Not because it's better, because dismissing them has consequences. This isn't fair, this isn't moral, this is reality. And you can either complain about reality or you can learn to navigate it. Your choice. Money doesn't change what you say, it changes who has to listen. Let's clarify something critical, because people love to misinterpret this phrase. At all costs does not mean break the law. It doesn't mean abandon your principles. It doesn't mean hurt people. What it means is this: discipline over comfort, strategy over emotion, Long-term freedom over short-term pleasure. It means you delay gratification. You sacrifice now to build later. You pay the price up front so you never have to pay the price of servitude. At all costs means you work when others party. You save when others spend. You learn when others scroll. You build systems when others chase shortcuts. It means you endure the judgment, the confusion, the isolation, because the people around you won't understand why you're not joining them in mediocrity, and you don't owe them an explanation. At all costs means you protect your focus like it's oxygen, because it is. Every distraction is a leak. Every yes to something trivial is a no to something vital. And most people drown in trivia because they never learn to say no. Here's the trade. You sacrifice comfort today to buy independence tomorrow. You trade temporary pain for permanent freedom. You pay in discipline now, so you never have to pay in desperation later. This is the cost. Not money, not morality. Just focus and consistency and the willingness to be misunderstood for years while you build something they'll respect for decades. If you're still watching, do me a favor. Comment, discipline over motivation. Let me know you're still here. Let me know you're serious. Because motivation is a spark, discipline is a fire, and at all costs means you keep that fire burning when the wind tries to kill it. Now let's talk about risk. Because the game isn't fair, and pretending it is will destroy you. When you're poor, one mistake ends you. One medical emergency, one car breakdown, one missed paycheck, game over, you're wiped out. You have no margin for error, no cushion, no recovery time. When you're wealthy, failure is tuition. You lose on a deal, expensive lesson. You try something and it flops, data point. You still have capital, you still have options, you still have time. The game continues. This is the asymmetry of risk. The poor play, sudden death. The wealthy play best of 7, and they wonder why outcomes are different. Money is acceleration. When you're broke, every step is friction. You're dragging yourself uphill through mud. When you have resources, you have momentum. You're rolling downhill with gravity on your side. Same effort, exponentially different results. Think about this. A poor person starts a business with $5,000. They have one shot. If it fails, they're in debt, they're broken, they're back to zero. A wealthy person starts a business with $5,000. If it fails, they shrug, they try again. They adjust, they learn, they have 10 more shots, 20 more, 50 more. Who do you think wins? Not because they're smarter, not because they work harder, because they can afford to be wrong. And the freedom to be wrong is the foundation of all learning. Here's the brutal truth. Poverty is not a test of character. It's a prison of probability. The odds are stacked, the margin is razor thin, and the people who escape aren't necessarily the most virtuous. They're the ones who got lucky, got smart, or got ruthless fast enough to break the cycle. Wealth doesn't guarantee success, but it buys time, it buys attempts, it buys the ability to pivot without panic. And in a game where survival requires iteration, that's everything. This is why the rich get richer, not because of greed, because of geometry. Compounding works in their favor. They have the capital to weather storms, exploit opportunities, and build systems that generate while they sleep. Meanwhile, the poor are trading hours for dollars and hoping nothing breaks. If you want to win, you have to understand the board, and the board is tilted. Your job isn't to complain about the tilt. Your job is to climb fast enough that gravity works for you instead of against you. Let's talk about the things people pretend are pure. Loyalty, justice, ideas. All of them bend to money, all of them. Loyalty is strongest when it's rewarded. You can talk about honor and duty all you want, but sustained loyalty requires reciprocity. People stay loyal when they're taken care of. When there's a share, when there's a stake. Strip away the incentive and watch how fast loyalty evaporates. This isn't cynical, this is design. Humans are transactional. We evolved to cooperate when cooperation benefits us. Remove the benefit, and the cooperation fades. That's not evil, that's biology. Justice? Let's be honest. Justice is a luxury good. If you have money, you get lawyers, you get time, you get appeals, You get experts. You get delays. You get settlements. You get outcomes. If you're broke, you get a public defender with 200 cases and 10 minutes to care about yours. You get plea deals. You get guilty verdicts. You get sentences. Same courthouse. Same laws. Different access. That's not justice. That's just a menu. And if you can't afford to order, you get whatever's on the bottom shelf. Ideas. Beautiful, pure ideas. They die without funding. You can have the cure for cancer in your lab notebook. But if you can't afford the clinical trials, the regulatory approvals, the distribution networks, it stays in your notebook. Someone else with money will patent something less effective but more marketable, and they'll win. Not because their idea was better, because they could amplify it. Every idea that changes the world requires three things: validity, funding, and distribution. Most people stop at validity. They think being right is enough. It's not. Being right without resources is just being correct and ignored. You want your idea to matter? You need money for marketing, money for PR, money for media, money for lobbyists, money to buy attention in a world where attention is the scarcest resource. The best idea with no budget loses to the mediocre idea with $1 billion war chest every single time. This is why amplification beats correctness. This is why the truth doesn't always win, because truth is silent until someone pays for the megaphone. So here's the stamp I want you to remember: amplify or die. You can be brilliant in silence, or you can be average with a platform. The platform wins. The platform always wins. Now let's talk about the art of using money, because having it is one thing, deploying it is another. If you show too much, people envy you. If you hide too much, people suspect you. There's a balance, a formula. Show enough to command respect, hide enough to stay safe. This is the dance. You display competence without arrogance. You demonstrate capacity without excess. You signal strength without vulnerability. It's strategic theater, and if you get it wrong, you become a target. Here's what I mean. You drive a nice car, not the nicest car, nice enough that people know you're serious, but not so nice that they assume you're reckless or showing off. You wear quality clothes, not logos, not brands, just quality, subtle, understated. The people who know, know. The people who don't matter. You live in a good neighborhood, not the best, good, safe, stable. You don't broadcast your address. You don't post your home on social media. You keep that private, because privacy is part of the fortress. And that's the next layer, defense, building the fortress. Money without protection is just a target. You need legal structures. You need insurance. You need asset separation. You need liquidity reserves. You need layers between you and catastrophe. This is not paranoia. This is architecture. Think of it this way: a fortress versus a zoo. The fortress is disciplined, walls, moats, strategic entry points, controlled access, everything designed for defense. The zoo, it's chaos, animals everywhere, no structure, no control, just spectacle and vulnerability. Most people live in a zoo. They display everything, they protect nothing, and when the predators come, and they will come, there's nowhere to hide. Wealth requires discipline, not just in acquiring it, but in managing it. You build walls, you create buffers, you separate personal from business, you diversify, you insulate, you prepare for the worst while working toward the best. This is not greed, this is prudence. And prudence is what separates the wealthy from the temporarily rich. Let's talk about relationships, because money doesn't ruin relationships, scarcity does. When you're broke, every relationship is transactional by necessity. You need things, they need things, everyone's calculating, everyone's keeping score. Love and friendship become negotiations. Who paid last? Who owes whom? It's exhausting, and it rots the foundation. When you have money, relationships can breathe. You're not keeping score because you don't have to. You can be generous without resentment. You can help without expecting return. You can walk away from toxicity without fear of losing your safety net. Money doesn't buy love, but it removes the desperation that poisons it. Here's the truth. Scarcity breeds resentment. Abundance breeds generosity, not always, not automatically. But the conditions are different, and conditions matter. Now let's talk about something deeper. Freedom of speech. Real freedom, not the legal kind, the practical kind. When you're poor, you can't afford to speak your mind. You bite your tongue at work. You nod along with your boss. You agree with clients even when they're wrong, because you need the paycheck. You need the gig. You need the favor. Your honesty has a price, and you can't afford to pay it. When you're wealthy, you can speak the truth, not recklessly, not stupidly, but honestly, because you're not afraid. You don't need their approval. You don't need their job. You don't need their network. You have options, and options are freedom. Silence becomes power when you choose it. But when silence is forced, it's just fear with a polite face. I'm not saying wealth makes you a saint. I'm saying wealth removes the economic coercion that forces you to lie. It removes the gun from your head, and when the gun is gone, you can finally think clearly. Most people don't realize how much of their personality is just fear dressed as diplomacy. How much of their kindness is just survival strategy. How much of their agreement is just submission to avoid consequences. Money doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've been hiding. Let's talk about the one thing you can never get back: time. The poor sell their time in pieces, by the hour, by the shift, by the task. They trade their life for money, minute by minute, until there's nothing left but exhaustion and regret. The wealthy buy time. They buy other people's hours. They buy automation. They buy systems that work while they sleep. They buy leverage. And leverage is the difference between living and merely surviving. Think about this. A poor person works 40 hours a week for 40 years. That's over 80,000 hours. Sold, gone. For what? Just enough to keep playing the game, just enough to not lose, never enough to win. A wealthy person works 40 hours a week for 10 years building a system. Then that system works for them for the next 30 years. Same hours, exponentially different result. The difference is not effort, it's architecture. It's designing your life so that your time compounds instead of depletes. Here's the long-term vision piece. The wealthy think in decades. They prepare for famines that haven't started. They position for opportunities that haven't appeared. They build infrastructure while everyone else is reacting to headline. The poor think in weeks. How do I make rent? How do I pay this bill? How do I survive until Friday? There's no space for strategy, no room for long-term thinking. Just constant, grinding, short-term survival. This is not a character flaw. This is circumstantial reality. When you're drowning, you don't plan next year's vacation. You just try to breathe. But here's the trap. If you never build margin, you never escape the urgency. You're stuck in reactive mode forever. Every day is triage. Every month is crisis. And decades pass while you're just trying to get through the week. Money buys the margin, the space, the time to think, the time to plan, the time to build something that outlasts you. Time is the ultimate asset because it's the only one you can't replace. And the people who understand this don't sell their time. They invest it, they structure it, they protect it like it's sacred, because it is. Now let's talk about perception. Because the same action looks different depending on who's doing it. A poor person takes a risk. They're called reckless, irresponsible, foolish. They should have known better. They should have been more careful. A wealthy person takes a risk. They're called bold, visionary, courageous. They're innovators, disruptors, leaders. Same action, different perception. Why? Because wealth creates a presumption of competence. If you have money, people assume you know what you're doing. If you're broke, they assume you don't. This double standard runs through everything. Credit, opportunities, benefit of the doubt, second chances. All of it flows toward the wealthy and away from the poor. You want a loan? If you're broke, they grill you. They question you. They want collateral, co-signers, proof, documentation. If you're wealthy, they offer you money. They call you. They pitch you deals. They beg you to borrow. Why? Because the system rewards people who don't need it and punishes people who do. That's the design. That's the trap. Reputation matters more than competence. Not because reputation is more important, but because reputation controls access, and access controls outcomes. If you have a reputation for wealth, doors open, calls get returned, meetings get scheduled, ideas get heard. Not because you're smarter, because you represent opportunity, you represent safety, you represent upside with limited downside. If you have a reputation for struggle, doors close, calls go unanswered, meetings get cancelled, ideas get dismissed. Why? Because you represent risk, you represent effort, you represent potential problems without guaranteed payoff. This is why appearances matter. This is why image matters. Not because substance doesn't matter, because appearance controls whether anyone ever gets close enough to evaluate your substance. Here's the motif again. Appearances are the highest form of truth when you can afford to shape them. You can be brilliant and broke, and no one will listen. You can be mediocre and wealthy, and people will assume you're wise. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's functional. And understanding function is more useful than complaining about fairness. The game rewards perception, so play the game, build the substance, but package it correctly, because unpackaged substance is just invisible genius. Let's talk about what happens after you're gone. The poor work their entire lives. They sacrifice, they struggle, they give everything, and within one generation, it's erased, forgotten. Their grandchildren won't know their names. Their contributions disappear like dust. The wealthy build institutions. They endow foundations. They fund universities. They create businesses. They establish trusts. Their names get carved into buildings. Their influence extends beyond their lifetime. Not because they were better people, because they had the resources to institutionalize their impact. This is conquest stage 1. Acquire. But acquisition alone is meaningless. You need conquest stage 2. Preserve. Preservation requires structure. It requires training the next generation. It requires teaching them how to manage, how to grow, how to protect. It requires eliminating weaknesses before they become disasters. Most wealth dies in 3 generations. Not because the descendants are lazy, because they were never taught. They inherited the result without understanding the process. They got the money without the mindset. And money without mindset is just temporary luck. Dynasty requires intentionality. You have to build systems that outlast you. You have to encode your values into structure. You have to create succession plans, governance models, and educational frameworks. You have to treat legacy like engineering, not inheritance. The Rockefellers didn't stay wealthy by accident. The Rothschilds didn't maintain power through luck. They systematized, they institutionalized, they turned wealth into architecture. This is not about ego, this is about responsibility. If you build something meaningful, you have an obligation to protect it, not just for yourself, for everyone who depends on it, your family, your employees, your community. Wealth without legacy is just consumption. You eat it, you spend it, it's gone. Wealth with legacy is transformation. It compounds, it grows, it builds, it outlasts. Remember that open loop from earlier? Let me close it now. Why saving alone won't save you. Saving is what the system wants you to do. Park your money in a bank account. Earn 0.5% interest while inflation runs at 7%. Watch your purchasing power erode year after year. Feel responsible. Feel prudent. Feel safe. Meanwhile, the bank takes your deposits and multiplies them. They loan out $10 for every $1 you gave them. They charge 15% interest on credit cards, 20% on personal loans. They're not saving, they're leveraging, they're building, they're playing offense. And you're playing defense. You're protecting what you have instead of expanding what you could have. Defense doesn't win championships. Defense doesn't build empires. Defense just delays the inevitable. Here's the poverty trap. You're told to save because saving feels safe. But safety is an illusion when the game is rigged against savers. The system inflates away your savings. It taxes your meager interest. It charges you fees for the privilege of letting them use your money. The wealthy don't save. They invest. They leverage. They build assets that appreciate. They create cash flow that compounds. They use other people's money to multiply their returns. They understand that money sitting still is money dying slowly. Think about real estate. A poor person saves for 30 years to buy a house with cash. A wealthy person puts down 20%, finances 80%, and buys 5 houses. Same capital, 5 times the exposure, 5 times the appreciation, 5 times the cash flow, 5 times the tax advantages. Who wins? Not the person who saved responsibly, the person who leveraged intelligently. This doesn't mean be reckless. This means understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt buys assets. Bad debt buys liabilities. Good debt builds equity. Bad debt builds dependency. The system wants you to fear debt because fear keeps you small. But the wealthy use debt as a tool. They borrow at 3% to invest at 10%. They use leverage to accelerate what would take decades into years. Saving is defense. Investing is offense. Leveraging is force multiplication. And if you're only playing defense, you're not playing to win. You're playing not to lose. And playing not to lose is how you lose slowly over 40 years instead of quickly in 4. So yes, save. Build your emergency fund. Create your buffer. But don't stop there. Don't let saving become your strategy. Let saving be your foundation while you build the real wealth on top of it. Let's talk about what you're not seeing, the invisible cost, the cost of doing nothing. Every day you wait is a day of compounding you lose. Every month you delay is momentum you'll never recover. Every year you stay comfortable is a year someone else is building the advantage that will make you irrelevant. Inaction feels safe. It feels like you're not making a mistake, but inaction is a decision, and often it's the worst decision. Because while you're waiting for perfect information, for perfect timing, for perfect conditions, the game is moving without you. The wealthy understand this. They act on 70% information. They adjust as they go. They course correct in motion. They know that moving in the approximately right direction beats standing still in the exactly right spot. You know what's expensive? Regret. You know what's costly? Looking back at 45 and realizing you spent 20 years preparing instead of building. You spent 2 decades getting ready instead of going. You spent half your life waiting for permission that was never going to come. The cost of inaction compounds just like interest, except it compounds negatively. Every opportunity you miss opens for someone else. Every connection you don't make gets made without you. Every skill you don't develop becomes a gap that widens. And here's the cruelest part. You don't see it happening. It's not dramatic. It's not sudden. It's just a slow fade into irrelevance. You look around one day and everyone's ahead. Everyone moved. Everyone built. Everyone except you. This is why urgency matters. Not panic, not recklessness, but urgency. The understanding that time is the one asset you cannot recover. You can always make more money. You can always rebuild relationships. You can always learn new skills. But you cannot buy back years. The market doesn't care about your reasons. Your competition doesn't care about your excuses. The world doesn't pause while you figure things out. It moves. And you either move with it or get left behind. So what's the cost of waiting one more year? It's not just 12 months. It's 12 months of compound growth you'll never get. It's 12 months of lessons you'll have to learn later under worse conditions. It's 12 months of positioning you'll have to fight harder to reclaim. Stop waiting, stop preparing, stop planning for the perfect moment. The perfect moment is a myth. The best time was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now, today, this moment. So here we are, the end of the road, or the beginning, depending on how you look at it. Let me leave you with this. Wealth is not greed, it's sovereignty. It's the ability to say no. It's the power to protect what you love. It's the capacity to build what you believe. Wealth is not indulgence, it's insulation. It's the buffer between you and catastrophe. It's the margin that lets you think instead of react. It's the space where strategy lives. Wealth is not corruption, it's continuity. It's the bridge between generations. It's the structure that carries your values forward. It's the foundation on which others build. The mandate is simple. Pay today's price so you never have to bow tomorrow. Sacrifice now to buy freedom later. Build systems that outlast your effort. Create leverage that compounds while you sleep. This is not easy. This is not fast. This is not comfortable. But it's the only path that leads to true independence. And independence is the only thing worth fighting for. Everything we've covered today, from the asymmetry of risk to the art of leverage, from the perception game to the architecture of legacy, it all points to one central truth. Money is not the goal. Freedom is the goal. Money is just the most efficient vehicle to get there. You can choose noble poverty and romantic struggle. You can choose the comfortable lies and the virtuous excuses. Or you can choose sovereignty. You can choose to build. You can choose to win. If this hit you, if this resonated, if something in this message woke something up inside you, do me one favor. Comment below. I choose wealth. Let me know you're serious. Let me know you're committed. Let me know you're done with the comfortable lies. And if you want the next step, if you want the framework, if you want the field-tested, legal, systematic approach to building real leverage and preserving what you build, stay tuned. The next video breaks down the architecture, the blueprint, the execution plan. But for now, just make the choice. Because until you choose, nothing else matters. I choose wealth. Now it's your turn.